So hi everyone, this is yet another video in the series that I'm doing that helps to illuminate and give more information on the various modalities that I use in my work with my clients who are seeking to deepen or bolster their spiritual lives and their practices. And this one focuses specifically on ritual practice and devotional processes. So, right off the bat, I'll just acknowledge that ritual and devotion are words that for many people can have a lot of baggage associated with them, for, good reason, especially if you're someone who has experienced any kind of religious trauma. There can be a hesitation sometimes to engage in any sort of ritualized process. But I want to just share my own understanding and definition of ritual and devotion, just to help actually clarify what I mean by these things. Ritual to me is anything that we do repeatedly, with an orientation towards being part of a process that's bigger than ourselves. Devotion is basically related, if not almost the same, as a ritual practice. In fact, like they're essentially synonymous. But devotion to me usually connotes a sort of greater clarity about what that bigger thing is that we are seeking to deepen into relationship with, or be in the service of, however we want to really think of it. And so ritual is essentially the process by which we cultivate or deepen into a relationship with something that is bigger than us, that we, in other words, are devoted to. And so I'm not alone in thinking this. This is more and more through scientific study being shown to be true, that the human species is wired to be devotional. And that's not like a woo statement. That's a function of our evolutionary biology as social creatures, where we are not wired to be alone and only focused on ourselves outside of a relational context, outside of a relational container. That's why human infants literally cannot survive without the aid of other humans, for many, many, many years. That's not really the case for most of, like, just about any other species on the planet, which isn't, this is not me, saying that we're better than other species. It's just to say that we are somatically wired to necessitate relationship in order to survive from earliest age. And that does not change when we become adults. We still need to feel somatically, in addition to psychologically, that we belong to something bigger than ourselves. And the devotional process is the way that is what we do. That is what we do. We are constantly seeking to be in a relational dynamic with that which is bigger than us. But it's not always a given that we have a healthy sense of what it is that we long to be in a devotional relationship with. So in a lot of religious traditions, there's a concept that some might call idolatry, others might call it some other, by some other term, but it basically denotes this thing that can happen with people, and it's a common experience. I'm not using the word idolatry as like, oh, we've done something wrong, in the, as if there's anyone who is not prone to falling into, what idolatry denotes. But idolatry is essentially a term that's used to describe the experience of siphoning our devotional energies towards something that isn't quite what our devotional vessels are actually or trying to orient towards. So I'm someone who, for example, has benefited enormously from 12-step recovery. There are many other people like me out there. And whether or not someone considers themselves a 12-stepper, I'm just bringing this up to say that there are many of us in the world who have gone down a path of an addictive sort that was essentially the best attempt that we knew how to follow in order to try and get at that experience of union or relationship with a quote unquote higher power. You could call it a vaster power, a deeper power, just something that is bigger than us, and that is also loving, and that is trustworthy, and that is invested in healthy, healing, holy meaning whole etymologically, relationship with us. And it is very easy to get confused about what exactly is the thing that we are trying to be devoted to, because there are many, many, many things in the world that are actively seeking to distract us away from that for their own benefit, such as, right, profit generating enterprises, or particular religious figures who are seeking to take advantage of certain people. The list goes on and on. But the fact of the matter is that human beings are somatically engineered to be in a relationship and in a state of longing for relationality with something bigger than themselves that helps them to feel a sense of belonging with the wider, vaster reality that we live in. Um, and it's not always clear how to utilize the resources that we have or things around us to ensure that we are offering our devotional wiring to the thing that is actually in love with us in return, that isn't just trying to take advantage of us. Um, and so one of the offerings that I have in my business is called like a ritual consult, which is basically seeking to help people discern for themselves what is it that they are feeling a longing to be in a deeper relationship with, of the spiritual sort, right? And so that may look like, oh, they're really wanting to re-explore their relationship to a religious faith from their youth, but that they had a lot of baggage with, and they're trying to re-enter certain ritual practices from that, but having roadblocks with it. Or they're approaching a big moment in their life, like a wedding, or some other big threshold crossing that they want to actually ensure is imbued um, with healthy devotional energy, and but are not totally clear how to structure their event, or the lead up to it, such that they're able to siphon their devotional energies in a healthy way, that again doesn't get sort of distracted by the false lights, you might call them, if we're going to use like Lord of the Rings terms or whatever, so that people don't get distracted by those false lights, when they're really trying to remain as in as authentic as possible, when it comes to their devotional practice. So the ritual consults, part of my work is really for people who are longing to imbue or re-imbue their lives with spiritual meaning, of a and to practice healthy devotion, but who were never trained to understand, because very few of us were trained to understand the sort of conventional nuts and bolts of a ritual practice. How is a ritual structured? If you were to organize an event like a wedding or some kind of big moment, um, there are just kind of nuts and bolts structures to it that are not terribly complicated, but that if we don't know them, we can find ourselves floundering in terms of trying to understand how to, give a special moment, healthy spiritual structure, and guide participants through it from beginning to end. But also if it's not like one specific moment, but rather like I'm really wanting to reinvigorate a prayer practice or a meditation practice or start one for the first time, but I'm just having a really hard time figuring out how to structure my days and also my consciousness such that actually feels feasible or even enjoyable. These are not things that we have been taught as a culture, generally speaking, because of, current modern secular sort of orientations that we have now in the world, but that are absolutely fundamental to being able to navigate our day-to-day lives healthily and with integrity, and that also help to kind of a bumper, that serves as kind of a bumper, like in bowling, to prevent us from falling into the ditches of misguided devotion of the, addictive sort, whether it's addiction to a drug or to money or to sex or to whatever it is, whether it's a behavior or a substance or a relational dynamic, or even becoming addicted to our own feelings, our own opinions or whatever it is. Like, how do we actually ensure that we are um not getting stuck at kind of more constrictive levels of devotion, when actually our human vessels are wanting to continuously expand, to um, holier, more quote unquote whole making processes of devotion. So if you're someone who has been struggling to establish spiritual structure and meaning to your life, first of all, just know that you're not alone. The vast majority of people in this day and age struggle with that. And if you're wanting to uh, imbue for the first time or re-imbue your life with spiritual meaning, um, the one of the I would say the best starting points to go to is, first of all, to really feel into your longings, which can include some grief, and just sit with that. Just really feel into what is the like if there's grief there, right, that feels like a hollow space, like an emptiness, just feel into that as like the mold, the sort of shape that your devotional process can take when filled. And that can then help to maybe give some insight as to the kind of spiritual practices that might be suitable for you. But also, in a way, perhaps more importantly, what actually even those practices would be for. Like, our devotional practices, as far as I see them, are actually always meant to be gifts, to be offerings to something that is bigger than us. And just like when our palms are outstretched in a posture of offering, they're also in the posture of receiving. And it is through an offering of a spiritual practice to something greater than ourselves, by continuously showing up on the mat, for meditation or yoga practice or prayer, we end up receiving something in return. So, the sort of approach for any individual person to take in terms of what makes the most sense for imbuing their either their day-to-day life or a particular ceremony with meaning. It's hard to offer like generalized guidance for that here, just because it's so particular to a person. But again, like a great and I think a very healthy starting point is just to feel into like the shape and the quality of one's longing, and not rushing to fill it, to meet it, but really sitting with it, because it's when we rush to try and fill that we can fall into, pursuing false lights, to into addictive patterning. And in 12-step recovery circles, it's often referred to as the God-sized hole in us. Um, and addictions are an attempt to try and rushedly fill that with something that is smaller than God, or higher power, as it's also referred to in 12-step recovery. So if you are someone who is feeling a kind of void like that and wanting to um, to just explore that and possibly fill it down the line. First, I just invite you to sit with that longing, and then upon sitting with that, just seeing what emerges from that supposedly empty space. Because a lot of times the void in mythic tradition is exactly the place from which reality emerges. It is from emptiness that substance actually comes forth. And so allowing yourself to just be with that longing, that emptiness, if you have it, and then seeing what inspiration comes in terms of, steps forward potentially to take, then you go from there. And there are people like me who are available to help with that discernment. This kind of work is not 12-step recovery work. So I just want to clarify that in case that was confusing there. But I'm available for helping people to discern what kind of ritual and devotional process makes most sense for them at this stage in their life. There are many other people who can do that, including a lot of spiritual and religious figures in one's local context, if that is something that feels comfortable for you. And of course, there's also, as I mentioned, 12-step recovery settings if you do struggle with a particular addictive tendency. That is a really, really beautifully tried and true for many folks method to help us discern what kind of process is helpful for us in terms of filling, the devotional voids that we might feel within our lives. So, um, if this is something that you would like to explore, definitely feel free to reach out, and we can, work together to help you imbue more ritualized devotional meaning to your life. And also, of course, there are many resources beyond me to help with that. And whatever ends up being the case for you, may your longings and may your needs, your devotional needs guide you in a beautiful direction, even if and when that includes terrains of grief. Um, it is those terrains that, in my experience, ultimately help us to develop a more mature form of joy and sense of belonging. So best of luck to you and your devotional and ritual explorations. And thank you for listening and for being here.